So I'm full-time in the fire service.
Okay.
And I've done a lot of natural disaster relief, recovery, responses and all that. You can edit this. I'm gonna say this.
You're fine with it being on camera?
I don't care. I'm just saying, it is what it is.
Okay.
You will never find everybody who's missing.
Right.
You will not find all the livestock that is missing.
No.
There is, I guarantee you, I'd almost be willing to give you my left arm for it. There's bodies that's buried up under this silt. There's bodies that's in these lakes that's been washed down hills. You'll never find them. You'll never get 100% count out of them. There's going to be a snow melt come this spring off the top of the mountains. It's going to cause a lot of water in these creeks. You're going to find remains. There's no doubt about it. You'll never find everybody.
Hey there, friends. Welcome back to UNASA TV. As many of you know, Meet My Neighbor Productions, our nonprofit, has made a lot of efforts over the last several months to raise funds and help farms impacted by Hurricane Helene. And through those efforts, networking and having field teams out there doing work ourselves, we've come across a lot of fantastic people, reputable nonprofit groups that are doing real work on the ground. And we've tried to share as many of those stories with you guys as we possibly can to help you make better decisions on how you can contribute, because there's been a lot of groups out there that have taken advantage of the situation. Today's story includes Tori and Justin. Tori and Justin are first responders when it comes to farms. Justin's actually a first responder when it comes to people and farms. He's been a firefighter for nearly his entire career. But they have a very fascinating nonprofit, and they continue to do a lot of work with some of the same people that we are trying to support. And so we wanted to share this with you. I'm going to put this in there more as an interview style, a little less edited, because I think there's a lot of interesting conversations that happened in here, and I think it's worth listening to, hearing, firsthand what people are experiencing even now. Hopefully you guys will continue to support the work that they're doing, the work that we're doing, so that we can continue to do good as we go into 2025. This is not an issue that's going to go away anytime soon. So enjoy this conversation. We will have some more updates for you guys on the work that we've been doing. It's been a difficult process to get, the work done and get content to put out to you guys. We don't have as many resources as we'd like to when it comes to the nonprofits, but that's usually the way it goes. So anyway, enjoy this segment, and I hope you learned something from it, and I hope you guys can find a way to support the things that Tori and Justin are doing, because people like them are really important to our rural communities, especially our agricultural communities. They are, like I said, first responders when these storms hit.
I'm Tori McLeod. My husband and I own Four Hooves Large Animal Services, and we pretty much do all non-emergency and emergency equine and livestock services. The only thing we don't do is vet them or train them. So if you need those, we can refer you to somebody. But everything else we pretty much do.
What are some things that have happened for you guys where your professional business intersects with some of what you've seen up there? Where have you been called to be useful, or what have you felt was needed that you guys have been able to participate in?
Wow. Where do we start?
Yeah,
So part of our business, we do a lot of technical rescue for large animals. So that can mean horses and overturned trailers, stuck in the mud, natural disaster responses, things like that. So that part of our business, along the side of our colleagues and some of the network teams that we work with, that's what started it, the deployments for us, is we went up there on the disaster deployment side for animal rescue and recovery to start off with. We worked with several other team members and associate teams of ours and rescued 15 horses off of Black Mountain that were pretty much stranded there due to the rising waters and things like that, and they didn't have a farm left. So that's kind of what started this, and then after that mission ended, some of the other teams that we were with demobilized and went to Florida for Milton, we stayed here and continued our efforts with providing supplies, livestock supplies, humanitarian efforts, things like that to the ones that could not get out and could not buy or afford their own supplies. So that's pretty much where I think it started with us as far as the rescue response goes.
Obviously, the immediate emergency need isn't the same as it was whenever the hurricane was here and gone in that second, but it's still very, very much a need.
Oh,
so
absolutely.
if you could speak at all to what you're seeing now.
Yeah, so right now we're still concentrating on getting feed and hay supplies to the folks who have livestock or animals, companion animals, all animals in general. The issue is they don't have storage. They've lost their barn, they've lost their home. So a lot of these folks are taking bare minimum supplies because bear and wildlife is an issue. They have nowhere to put it. So the wildlife comes in, opens the bags, destroys the feed and all. So where we've been taking tons of forage and feed, we're taking them to a distribution site, dropping them off, and then they're putting them in small trucks and even us putting them in side-by-side ATVs and hauling to them just because the access to the roads in and out to their farms or crossing the creek that's washed out with no bridge. That's the only access you have, and we're only dropping off 3 or 4 bags at a time and just enough hay to get them by at weeks at a time. There's no storage.
What about their living conditions in some of those spaces? I mean, I'm sure there's quite the gamut between people that were affected marginally to completely.
So we've seen, and you can ride down the road and look at this yourself. We've seen some houses that don't even look like it's been touched. The barn and the pasture is completely gone. And then you ride down the road and the people are just standing there looking at what was there.
Yeah,
they've lost everything. Where, the creek was 30 foot, 40 foot wide, 6 foot deep, years and years and years. Now it's 100 yards wide and 20, 30 foot deep, and what are they going to do? So it's the devastation. It's a big loss.
And not only that, but it's when we go up there, as we pass by some of these places, there's places that are on the mountainside that if you try to put yourself in that homeowner's shoes on the night of the storm, I don't know psychologically and physically and emotionally how these people survived that night, because there's a couple of houses up there that we've seen, and if you look at them, there's literally a huge landslide to the right and to the left. It just parted ways and spared their house. But to be in that building at that time and to hear the landslide, and how do you fathom that kind of stuff? Do you just think that your life is going to end right there and that's where it is? Or do you wake up the next morning and see that you've been spared, but yet, your place of employment hasn't been spared, so you've lost your income, you've lost everything that you've had, you have no way of getting out because your road just got washed out, so now you're kind of trapped in that, in your home, essentially, with no way to get resources, no money to get resources, and things like that. So, there's different levels of despair and destruction up there for people. You have some folks that have just dealt with not having power for a couple of weeks and they've gotten by, and you still have people up there that don't have power, don't have water, that are still on boil water advisories, to get onto the good side of things. And it's, we worry about our first world problems out here, and to go there, it's completely eye-opening as to the struggles that they're going through. And what people, I think, don't realize is not only did they have the destruction in the aftermath of the storm, but now, like I mentioned, they've lost their jobs, they lost their income, they've lost everything. And a lot of these people were on, check to check to check, didn't have any retirement, didn't have any savings. They're just hardworking people that are up there. And now, they have no way to purchase feed for their animals, whether it be companion animals or livestock. They have no way to, like Justin said, store it if they could purchase it. And then those up there who had spent years providing the hay from their fields for these people to purchase, their hay fields now are under, 2 foot of silt, and they're absolutely destroyed. There's not going to be any hay up there for these people to get. And so this is not going to be one of those situations where it's just, days, weeks, and months. I mean, this is going to go through the winter and easily into next year for these people to start recouping to where they can stand on their own 2 feet and start getting life back to some sort of normalcy.
And not only losing their houses, but they lost their transportation. So what they did have to be able to come down the mountain once a week or however to provide for the family. There were several cases that we heard that the people said they were standing in their backyard in a van, a full-size conversion van from over 3 miles away is upside down on their back porch. There's many places that you're riding and you look at the creek or in somebody's front yard, backyard, or in a tree, you see a frame and you stop and look at it and it's a car that looks like it's been through the compactor to the scrapyard. So yeah, it's a mess.
How would you say, from your experiences going up there after the storm, how has this impacted the people? Like, what are they like? Are they
The people affected, or just the general communities as a
or just
whole?
the general community as a whole?
So some of the things that I've noticed, there's a lot of folks that's very appreciative when you roll in. You roll in with water, you roll in with feed, food, or hay and supplies, some of them. And then again, it's Appalachians. Those folks are used to taking care of themselves and don't like asking for help. But there is some folks that if you sit and talk to them and try to make them like your neighbor, you talk to them, they're very appreciative. And the more you ask, the more they'll give in to you and say, hey, you're okay folks. You're not just some Joe Blow from wherever here trying to get my stuff and property, and then they open up to you and then you can get more supplies to them and they'll ask you for help. So
Yeah, there's one case in particular, like he was saying, we found out from about this lady from one of her neighbors that lived over a mile away on another street. We were doing some recons. We're like, hey, does anybody need any livestock feed or hay in this area? And they were like, yeah, check with so-and-so. She's up there, she's by herself. And so when we originally went up there, she was kind of skeptical about what we were doing, our intentions, and we told her we wanted to help. And it helped us too that somebody we had already helped prior to her, she knew. So when I called and left her a voicemail message, she actually played my voicemail for him and said, hey, do you know these folks? And he's like, yeah, they're really good. They've been helping me. So we are kind of inclusive, with that. And moving forward from that, we found out the more we kept going up there, that the first group that came in to help her out, and they said they were going to help her right after the storm, they tried to put up fencing because some of her cattle fencing got washed away. And when they put up the cattle fencing, they said that they grew up on a farm and they wanted to, help out as much as they could. And they nailed it to trees, but nailed it like this high. So the cattle were just going up underneath the fence. They didn't know that you were supposed to nail it lower. So like all the work that they did for that day, she was very grateful for because they took their time out to do it. But she had to go back and redo it or get somebody to redo it. And then the second group that she said came in, frustrated her so much because all they wanted to do was take her horses and her cows. And, and she was just like, they upset me so much. I can't do this anymore. She said, I didn't want to let anybody else up here because of what I had experienced already with the people that came up here to help. And then now that we've stepped in and we've gotten some other folks to step in with us and start, helping some folks up there, we consider her, we've adopted her, and so have our friends, and she's like that with us. And like Justin was saying, now she's never been one to ask for help. And I think that's kind of the mantra up there. You're the mountain people. You don't need help. You're self-sufficient. And don't want to bother anybody, because her thing has always been there's somebody else out there that needs it worse than I do. And she's always kind of passed the buck. But the more we get to talking to her and just general conversations and things like that, we kind of find little hints here and there of what her needs are. So we're slowly trying to help her with that kind of stuff.
And by going to her house, we've met some other folks who are on the mountain road who has livestock as well. And we've been able to actually help them and get feed for them so they know that we're in and out to provide that service for them as well.
Yeah, she's actually called us and said, hey, I've, my neighbor down the road or the guy that lives 5 miles down the mountain could use some help. So I've sent him your information so he knows that we're like legit people that are not going to come in there and just try to load up our trailer with their animals and stuff and, take off with them or whatever. Because it's unfortunate. Disasters bring out the best and the worst in people. The best because people like us and a lot of other people out there want to help, want to do everything we can to help these people that have nowhere to turn. But then it brings the people out there too. We could take pallets of feed to distribution centers, and then there's folks that come into those distribution centers that aren't vetted because the volunteers don't have time to vet everybody. They come in, they may not even have horses, but they'll come in and get 10 bags of feed, and the next thing you know, you see it on Facebook Marketplace being sold. And so it brings out the worst in people that they're hoarding these items and stuff instead of letting them go to the folks who actually need them.
And it's not just feed that are doing that with it. It's generators and diapers and chainsaws and whatever that somebody could use to actually get out of their house or start rebuilding. It's this product. So we've told people who bring supplies that they're right on it. Donation from hurricane relief. That way, if it pops up 2 months from now, hey, why am I buying this when it was donated material for you? So, and that goes for a lot of material. So I'm full-time in the fire service.
Okay.
And I've done a lot of natural disaster relief, recovery, responses and all that. That first day or two is all you have to do to get by. Help's coming. They're going to bring food. There's people who take care of the fire department. But for instance, where we were at that first week, we were no cell phone service.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No power. No, nothing. Whatever we turned it in is what we had. And we were grateful to have some two-way communication that we were able to get on our grant. We were relaying messages back to some other team members here who were making phone calls for us to line up transports or to talk to the Department of Ag, who was the one who asked us to deploy, because there was nothing. It's crazy.
Only way you could get out with Starlink.
Yeah, if you had it. And it was a couple of days before we were actually able to get that going.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Well, with when we were talking about donations, thinking about the Boy Scouts this weekend, learned a little bit about this from the people running the Creston Riverview Community Center. But the economy of a disaster, you have a ton of donations going out there. A lot of it they can't end up using, or people don't want to take, because it's just too much used clothes and things like that. So in your perspective, a lot of that was also needed right up front, especially for those that lost their houses. They would take a shirt off and everybody's back just to stay warm, But now we're at a different phase in that. And what they don't need is more stuff, but what they do need is probably financial resources.
Some of the distribution sites that we have been working with, people have offered up like warehouse space and all that for a month, a couple of 6 weeks, 8 weeks or whatever. Now they have to go back into their jobs and normal business. So they're still sitting here with pallets and cases of water and supplies. But as things are starting to get better as far as water supply and coming back up, you're able to drink water that's being provided, out of Asheville and Black Mountain and so forth. There's nowhere to take this water to. So now what do we do with this abundance of water that everybody has sent tractor trailer loads off? It's just sitting there. So what do we do with it? Yeah, that's another issue that we're having as well. We started off at 6 major distribution spots just for livestock, and I think we're down to 3 now, 3 major ones that people can take stuff to. But there's still abundance of feed and stuff coming in. We get calls every day from folks out of state. There's a guy called me the day before yesterday who's got 24 round bales coming out of Indiana horse quality. So where do we send those folks to?
And where does it get stored?
Yeah, who can take it, who can store it, who's got the equipment to unload it, and then who can get it reloaded onto something smaller to where it needs to go.
Yeah, because some of these places, you can't get even a 20-foot trailer in. So if you're talking about taking round bales up for somebody who has 50 cattle, they can't just get by with 1 or 2 round bales, at a time. But in order to take them up, you have to stop somewhere down on like a major road and then unload them, load them on something smaller, and then get them up there and then come back down. And sometimes that mountain driveway is, a couple of miles long. So, I mean, it's definitely a time process, and it takes a lot of effort and a lot of coordination to make things like that happen. We're fortunate in that we're working with a couple of local places for donations. More Equine Feed and Pet Supply in Southern Pines, they've been working since day one with us. They're kind of like our logistics and our hub. The owners, Kim and Kaylee, have gone above and beyond measure to help with this effort. So any donations that come into there, they go into a hurricane relief account. And what that allows us to do, instead of getting a lot of things, a lot of donations that people don't necessarily need, it gives us targeted money so that if somebody calls us and says, hey, I need beet pulp, or I need this specific request, we can kind of fill that request with the money off the account. And, they call their vendors and they sell it to us, so to speak, at cost. So they're not making anything off of any of the relief efforts that they're doing. It's just going from the donations that are being made to specific requests. Then once they get it in from their vendors, then we come, or some of our network of folks who transport they'll come in, load it up, and then they'll take it to the distribution areas where they need to go and drop it off with the specific people who requested those items. Right now, our last project was working on like the Shelter Logic carport type shelters, so people can put them up to store hay and feed in, to help keep it out of the rain and the snow. And it's easy for 1 or 2 people, like a husband and wife, to put up. They don't have to build a wooden building or anything like that. So that's our most current project, along with still trying to get feed and hay and fencing supplies up to those who need it. And there's still people out there we haven't heard from yet, so.
Now,
Good. I was going to say to add on to that. I mean, it's not only the shelters and stuff, but we've had several folks who needed financial help as far as heat, propane. If they got some damage done to their side of their house, insulation or what have you. There's money out there that's being donated, and always more that could be done just for heat. I mean, it's 20s, 30s right now, and already had snowfall in the mountains. So anything like that folks could help with, it's get it to someone to get it to the right folks who can use it, and not where it's not going to be needed.
so along with the hearing those needs, I feel like it creates a lot of energy for people wanting to do in some capacity. So rather than someone grabbing a trailer who's never driven a trailer before, or rather than sending more water, what are some ways that people, like obviously monetary donations to a list of places, whether it's like the feed shop, or whether it's through the auction that we're doing, or whatever it is, if you could speak a little bit to that, so people have somewhere to drive their energy when they're looking at this.
I would probably say whatever organization you're donating to, vet it very, very carefully. Make sure it's legitimate. Don't just check in with somebody who knew somebody that heard about this organization. So make sure your money is actually going to where it needs to go, and you're going to get the best bang for your buck when you're making those monetary donations. As far as the livestock side of things and itemized donations, you can never go wrong with hay, square bales or round bales, or even bagged hay. You can never go wrong with that. If you want to do any kind of feed, we recommend senior or complete feed, because you can pretty much feed that to any aged horse and be okay with that. And, of course, all stock or livestock feed for those who have a menagerie of goats and cows and alpacas, llamas. We do have resources for specific llama feed and for pig feed and for goat feed. We have that in storage now, just waiting for the request to come in for those specific needs, or we'll take it to a distribution center. But you can never go wrong with hay, complete feed, and all stock feed, if that's what you want. Anything above and beyond that, I would just make monetary donations for that, because there's people we've run into up there. There was a nonprofit that had 50 horses up there, and their road was washed out. They couldn't get supplies, things of that nature. And they had specific diets for those 50 horses, and somebody managed to get them 2 pallets of feed. But when it came in, it was some off-brand milled feed that the horses wouldn't eat, and it was more like an all-stock type feed. So they had 2 pallets of feed that was just sitting there that they could not feed their horses because they wouldn't eat it. So then they still needed resources to come in. So that's where we've kind of made our targeted approach and have tried very hard to meet the needs. Like that was the farm that wanted the beet pulp, so we managed to get them like 40 bags of beet pulp and things of that nature. So
That lasts 1 week with all those horses.
yeah.
So
And just like specific types of feed that, these guys are used to eating because you don't want to change their diet in the midst of already a stressful environment, because the vets up there, even though that most of them have gone back into work, they're still few and far between. They may not be able to easily access some of these areas to get in there to, treat for colic or other stress-induced illnesses.
And if you don't know anybody in the agricultural side of things, like I said, get a reputable propane company. There's folks up there that's going to need it for heat. And then ask them, hey, I want to put $500 on somebody's tab. Can you be sure they got heat? Can make it worthwhile, or close something? And I hate to say this, but someone like Meals on Wheels, you got somebody who's elderly that can't get out and go to, somebody can provide, help those guys who are donating their time in their truck, at least go buy fuel cards, gas cards or something to get to these folks who are out there doing, I call it small deliveries. We're hauling 40-foot trailers loaded to a distribution site, but the folks who's actually leaving the distribution sites to the drop-off points, you need to take care of those guys too, because they're out there on their own, and, compensate them a little bit for the fuel. Any little bit helps. So
It's what'll keep them going.
Exactly.
Yeah. Well, that was going to be my next question. You guys have jobs, right?
Yeah. Yes, I do.
So how is that going for you guys? This balance, and I know it's a drop in the bucket to what people are going through in the mountains. But how are you guys? And what are you seeing as other volunteers? Like, how is that balance?
Well,
how's it going for you?
So my line of work is I'm 30 years in the fire rescue service myself. This is what I've always known. It's what I've always done, and I will continue to. I'm lucky enough that my department that I work for and my boss man knows what we do, and is very supportive of us. And if there's a situation where I need something, I make a phone call, and we try to make it happen. I would say the first week or two was hit and miss. I would say the whole month of October, we might have been at her house a total of 5 nights.
Maybe.
Between just going 2 or 3 days, staying overnight, not coming back, going somewhere and grabbing feed, and then dead heading back, driving back after midnight because you want to help as much as you can.
To wake up at 4
to wake up 4 o'clock to go again, and before the time changed. And it was hit and miss there. There was some days like I need 5 more minutes of sleep. But
absolutely,
things have. And I hate to even put it this way, things have slowed down a little bit, but the need is still there. But it's more of a dedicated need, not let's just take everything and drop it off. Somebody will sort it out there and go back and get another load. Now, like, what we're talking about, it's a dedicated, okay, these guys have trying to help them out to get ready for the winter. It's coming. We're not feeding just for the day now. Let's stock them up, but the hiccup is storage. So this is going to be something that's 2 months, 3 months, 4 months away until we can get storage buildings or pods or something in there to store and give these guys and folks a place to stay.
Well, and then on top of that, you're looking at spring hay,
it's not existent.
It's not going to happen. So it's not happening.
And then when we talk about storage for these places, even those, Shelter Logic carports that we've been trying to get people to store hay and feed in, they can only hold maybe 50 to 100 square bales, each, the 10 by 20 size. that's not going to be enough for these people to last that have, lots of horses or cattle or goats or what have you. And then you have to factor in, is their next hay delivery scheduled for next week? Okay, well, next week, a snowstorm comes in. You can't get up the mountain to get them hay. They're out of hay. So they didn't have a place to store a lot of it. So you're kind of having to manage all of that as well, because some of these folks still can't get down the mountain to get their own stuff, get their own supplies. And if they could, they don't have a trailer anymore, or they don't have, if they have a truck, you can only fit so many square bales on a truck before you have to keep making 30, 45-minute runs to distribution centers back and forth. So, they're having to look for people that have bigger trailers that can do kind of a mass drop-off for them. And other people, like Justin was saying about maybe making financial donations for propane or electric bills or things like that to help people buy. There's a lady up there that, we've met, and she uses her side-by-side to feed her cattle and everything. That is her only mode of taking care of things on her farm. And her side-by-side was damaged during the storm. So it didn't run anymore, and that was all she had. And we took her some fencing supplies and things like that. Came back a few days later, and we found out that she had carried everything she needed to put fencing supplies up by hand and walked it out across the creek and everything all the obstacles she had to cross, and put temporary fencing up herself without having the means to throw it in the back of something and drive it out there. So that's going on out there as well, and we've actually taken it upon ourselves.
Yeah, we took her own ATV up there, dropped it off, and grabbed hers, and in the process of getting it fixed for just her, so she has a way to go around her farm. So. Yeah. And if you do go out there, if you got whatever supplies you go, don't go empty-handed. If it takes you an hour to go somewhere or another, or somebody offers you something, go pick it up. Don't waste a trip. Everybody can use something at some point or another. Don't go empty-handed. And that was when we started. That was the reason I was late the first day, is they deployed with the team. I was like, I'm not going empty-handed. I went and loaded a flatbed trailer and then took off. So never go empty-handed. Always take something. Somebody will use it.
You bring up some very logistically accurate points in regards to state and county guidelines and what people maybe don't even think about as far as these temporary housings or these structures. Has there been anything that you would like to speak to in that regard that you're comfortable saying?
I'll let you tag on that one.
Thanks. So, in regards to housing, there is several folks who go out there and they've started some small companies and they're working off of donations. They're building, we can't really call it tiny homes. We're calling it storage sheds, or a place to stay warm. And they're building these so they can be moved to someone's farm and put up for somebody to stay warm through the winter, and then later on in life they can be added on to. Some of the issues is they're having, I ain't gonna say condemn the property, but a lot of folks pulling in campers. This is what we've been told. I cannot speak 100% on it, but this is what I've been told by several folks, is they're not letting them bring some of the campers in and plug into the power that was there for a existing structure because it was damaged from the flood or from the storm itself. So it's not passing inspection, so to speak. But, we're in a state of emergency still, and there's just some things that needs to happen, and you got folks who are literally possibly freezing to death just trying to stay warm. There's some things that could be done or overlooked to make this happen. So that's some of the things that we're hearing and we're seeing on our side. We have some friends just started a business, Appalachian Army, who was building 2 to 3 to 4 sheds a day, trying to get it out to folks and insulated and looking supplies just to get these folks storage in a place to stay that's warm.
Right now, they're staying in their cars if they still had cars. They're staying in, some of them are staying in enclosed trailers that are just sheet metal. Some of them are staying in tents or just a tarp over a tree limb. And, temperatures are in 20s and 30s now. There's snow on the ground. That's not survivable. And I've seen a lot of social media posts about these storage buildings going out there for people to use however they see fit. And then, some devil's advocates, so to speak, are coming in and saying, well, they're not permitted. You can't hook them up to water. You can't hook them up to electricity. How are they going to, be any different? But what they don't realize, is right now, if they're in a tent, they don't have electricity. They don't have water. They don't have indoor plumbing that they can go to the bathroom or take a shower. They are surviving just with a shelter over their head. But yet that shelter is going to leak. It is going to collapse under a snow load. It is not going to be insulated at all because it's just a piece of material. And then even the condensation is going to cause it to be damp and wet on the inside, probably going to mildew and mold over time. And these are things that you're going to have to look at. So even without electricity and water, they're still going to be better off in a wooden insulated structure that is not going to collapse under the snow. It's going to provide a little bit more insulation than a thin piece of material. May not have the mold and mildew issues because you're not going to get that condensation and stuff on the inside. So any option right now, whether it has electric or water, is far more better than probably what a lot of these people are currently living in. And they've been used to it now for 2 months living without water and electric. They've gotten by with it. Not saying that's a great thing, but I would hope to never put myself in that situation, but if I had to, I think I would prefer to live in some sort of structure than a tent with or without all the amenities and utilities. So I mean, that's going to be there for a long time. These people cannot stay in tents for the next 6 months or however long. Winter times here, they're going to be freezing. Summertime, it's going to be 112 degrees. What are they going to do there? Are you going to put a bunch of box fans out there for the people that are still living in tents, or are you going to try to do something about it and get them beyond living in a tent or beyond living in their cars? One thing we didn't allude to earlier, too, talking about companion animals, is we just delivered 100 dog houses, insulated dog houses, that More Equine Feed and Supply managed to get the money donated to purchase. And we just took them up there to the ASPCA Regional Center in Conover, and their job was to contact local animal control agencies, rescue organizations, and see what individual needs were out there for these dogs, because they're still dogs that are chained to trees out there with absolutely no shelter because their kennels got washed away or what have you, or their homes got washed away, and they used to be indoor dogs, but their family doesn't want to give them up. So they need some sort of shelter as well, as their human companions. So
there's like an 80-year-old guy at this shelter that was volunteering this weekend, and he has a 60-foot bridge that goes to his house, which is gone. Mm-hmm. So he has a temporary bridge which is starting to fall in. Yeah. And everybody's like, you probably shouldn't be driving your car across that anymore. But he's a really elderly guy, and it's a long driveway on the other side. And he was like, well, I went to a Rebuild Ash meeting, and Department of Homeland Security was there, and they said that FEMA has allocated $48,000 per household for bridges to get to their houses. And he was like, and everybody said they hadn't gotten that money. And Homeland Security was like, well, you just have to keep reapplying. You're probably going to get denied the first several times, but you'll eventually get the funds. And I'm like,
when does the process stop?
Yeah, and
why should they have to keep replying? They should be boots on the ground, looking out there themselves and making this. The same thing when they first come out there. Oh, each household gets $750, or no, you don't get nothing because you don't qualify.
Yeah, well, he said he got denied because they said they didn't have a social security number. This is a very elderly guy, so you're thinking of the stress that he's going through, and he's like, but I put my social security number on every single form I filled out for them, and they sat there and helped me fill out the form. And he was like, but
why not? Why don't that FEMA agent put a bunch of people at the county office looking at GIS or who pays tax bills and find out who needs what?
Yeah.
Or boots on the ground and get out there and get dirty and do the work instead of having somebody sit at a table and roll around on the carpet. I call them carpet rollers. And try to figure out what they can do or what they can't do.
Well, I think they like the
boots
fact
on the ground.
that they could have somebody from Department of Homeland Security say, oh yeah, the funding's there, but then they also like the fact that they can make it extremely difficult to get it, so half the people don't.
I mean, there's been a lot of money donated to this.
Yeah.
Where is it at?
Well, it's like that concert in
$24 million. Where's it at?
Yeah.
Where's
well,
it
as
at?
somebody that was affected, I wasn't going to keep asking. Like, once you get denied so many times, that's embarrassing to ask for more. Like, it's already hard enough to bring yourself to ask.
And it's frustrating. You just don't want to have to deal with that.
And I didn't have time. Like, I had to quit working for a couple of weeks just to manage who to call, what material we lost, how do we replace this, like where
how do you prove
you
lost that stuff?
Yeah.
And you weren't just making it up to get.
Well, and see, with our house, it didn't wash away, so I was able to video where everything pretty much was.
Yeah.
what if you lost your house and you have nothing there to show?
Well, and not only this, you know, people that are up there, they're not internet savvy. They don't know how to go online and fill out applications and how to click on these empty boxes and type it in and convert it to a PDF and an e-signature and all of this stuff. They have no clue. And then you tell them that they need to go down the mountain and meet with FEMA. That's at the bottom of the mountain. Well, that's a chore in itself for them to get down the mountain, you know, to do this. And then you get down the mountain only to find that the person you were wanting to meet is no longer there. So then you have to come back up the mountain only to do it a different day. And then if they're being told, well, reapply, there's some point in that they just say, the hell with it.
Right.
And I'll just figure it out on my own. I will forage for nuts and berries, and I will cover myself in leaves and pine straw to keep warm, you know, and they'll just suck it up and you know, persevere, because they just don't want to have to deal with that. And a lot of them already have kind of a bad taste in their mouth about government stuff. And then to have this on top of it with no remedy in sight for them or no assistance in sight, it's
Nailing the
nailing. Yeah.
coffin closed.
Well, and there's another couple that came through the center when we were there. It reminded me of an old Keith Isley.
Okay.
But, you know, well-dressed couple, very friendly, happy, going as they go through. And the guy looks at me and he goes, "Did you see the house that was flipped over upside down in the river on your way here?" I was like, "Yeah." And he goes, "That was their house. No insurance, nothing."
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And he was like, "They can't start over at their age. They can't even get a loan for
Absolutely.
the house."
There's a lot of that up there that we found out is, you know, where the people's like, no flood insurance.
Yeah.
So they were actually trying to talk with insurance agencies and I call it the old school insurance agencies. We're trying to help them file a claim.
Like wind damage.
It was wind damage or something like that from a landslide or
Yeah.
a mudslide, not flooded or washed away, just so that they could make that happen.
Have they had any success with that?
I don't know. I don't know. But it would be a fool not to. I mean, like you said, we're in a state of emergency. Some things you just gotta let go and make it happen.
Well, and some of these, I mean, they're where we were is along the north fork of the New River, which is technically kind of a creek. I mean, we were close to the headwaters. It's usually only about a foot or two deep. And these houses are 20 feet up the bank. Nobody would have ever thought
Yes.
that
Yep.
the water was going to take them out, because they're used to seeing a little creek there. They're not used to seeing a river. And so it's just like, you know, multiply that across the entire backcountry and then out. You know,
The landslide that took out the community they call Craigtown, where the battalion chief from Fairview unfortunately lost his life, and 11 members of his family.
Yeah.
That landslide they measured, and it was approximately 3 miles long. We took our side-by-side up and saw estimate where it started as we went through Craigtown and followed it
See where
almost
it
down
split
to where
and then come back together.
yeah, but I mean, 3 miles worth of a mountain landslide, you know, and that's water and or dirt too. I
Dirt,
mean,
yeah.
so
Trees,
you
houses.
can't fathom that.
Now, we did see a pretty cool, the times we've gone up there, we were rather impressed with how quickly DOT is throwing up some of these bridges. Like, I mean, they are working hard and quick. But, I mean, what you're talking about, all of these driveways, all of these roads people just don't even know about,
Yeah.
or the DOT is not responsible
for
for technically. I mean, have you heard of any entities or resources being, well, he just was saying apparently FEMA has allocated $45,000 for every bridge or driveway, but I mean, I haven't ever heard, until he literally just said that, I had not heard of that. So is there anything you guys are aware of?
The only thing that I know currently is the gentleman I was referring to on his road. Like I said, they have 3 to 5 neighbors up above him, and he has a farm with horses and stuff too. And when his road got washed away, he had to find a private company to come in and work his road, and he has set up a GoFundMe to raise money to pay this private company who's donating some of their time and efforts, but still can't do everything pro bono. So he's put up a GoFundMe, and they're just funding it themselves because it's one of those secondary roads that is not a state maintained road. And in order for him to get down the road safely. There's still areas where it's very, very sketchy. You know, are you going to fall 100 feet down to the waterfall down below, or is there a landslide going to come from above and take you out? So, you know, not only them, but like I mentioned, emergency vehicles. If somebody had a heart attack or, you know, had some other kind of medical or traumatic emergency up there, whether it be a tree falling on somebody because they're trying to clear debris, there's, you know, you're going to be hard pressed to get an ambulance or a fire truck up here to some of these areas.
And good, and as well as that being said, is look at all the fire rescue departments and EMS stations who actually lost all their trucks to be able to respond. You know, a lot of folks are donating trucks, but what kind of condition are they in? And then you think about it, most of those departments up there are volunteers. So the path to get to the volunteers' house for them to get out, to get to the station to help someone else, what are we doing for those folks?
Have you heard of anything?
Absolutely not. Private companies and being neighbors and just people coming in with equipment doing what they can do to try to help out, just to make a path for a side-by-side or a small car.
Yeah, pretty much neighbors helping neighbors.
That's it.
And then the neighborhood is just expanded to reach, you know, all of North Carolina and other states. Everybody's kind of becoming somebody's neighbor at some point in time.
Are you in communication with any of the recovery groups that are still looking for bodies?
You won't. So you can edit this.
It's our personal
I'm
opinion.
gonna say
Do you
this.
want, you're fine with being on camera? 'Cause
I
we
don't-
may- wait, we're.
I don't
Yeah.
care. I'm just
Okay.
saying, you know, it is what it is.
Okay.
You will never find everybody who's missing.
Right.
You will not find all the livestock that is missing.
Nope.
There is, I guarantee you, I'd almost be willing to give you my left arm for it. There's bodies that's buried up under this silt. There's bodies that's in these lakes that's been washed down hills. You'll never find them. You'll never get 100% count out of them. There's going to be a snow melt come this spring off the top of the mountains. It's going to cause a lot of water in these creeks. You're going to find remains. There's no doubt about it. You'll never find everybody.
There was reports that, you know, horses got washed down from Old Fort Black Mountain, you know, Fairview area, you know, hey, speaking of horses, but they were washed down the mountain, you know, and due to their microchips, they were found in like Chimney Rock, Lake Lure, not alive, of course, but, you know, so that's just a testament to how far
3 to 5
something
miles of
can
minimum
travel.
distance that these animals, humans, are being pushed. And SCBA bottles, so I went back to the fire department, they were finding air packs that come from like the Black Mountain Old Fort area at Lake Lure, and that's miles away. So there's no telling what you're going to find in the years to come.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I have a question about the silt on the fields.
Okay.
It's like several feet deep.
Yes.
And you can't farm that. I mean, there's just
There's
no
no
way.
new. So basically what it is it's the sand that come out of the
It's like beach
creek,
sand.
and it looks just like beach sand.
Yeah.
You should go out there and mine it like gold mining, and you see the little deflate false gold stuff in it like that, but there's no nutrient in it. It's going to take years to get the hay production back up and grass and all.
Yeah, they're probably gonna have to come in and either drag all that stuff out and
Topsoil.
or put loads and loads of topsoil before they can even think about trying to fertilize it and get it primed and ready to be another pasture source. And that's for even putting animals on to graze, not just cutting hay or things of that nature. I mean, a lot of these people, you know, one gentleman we've talked to has 60 head of cows, and he had, you know, 30, 40 acres of pasture, and he would rotate pastures. And now he's managed to temporarily fence off a 5-acre field that was not under silt. And that's where his 60 head of cattle are right now, eating off of round bales.
So he's depending on the hay coming in from
Sacrifice.
wherever else.
Yeah, because I mean, I was looking at that. It gets wet and then it cracks apart, and the cracks go way down, and it's deep. I mean,
Yeah.
it's like just where we were this weekend, several feet deep, and you can't even walk on it. It's too soft.
Yep, and we, some of the colleagues we were working with right as all of this started, we actually got their side-by-side stuck. in an area like that, because on top it just looks kind of mushy, mushy grass and everything. But then once you go and then you sink, it's over with. And we ended up having to hook a winch to a truck to get the side by side out. But it's deceiving for sure. And then people are like, well, when this dries up, it'll be grass again. No, it's not.
No, it's
and
going to be a while.
It's
going to be bush when it rains.
Yeah, and then it's going to be contaminated grass and, not palatable for most of these guys. And then on top of that too is you have some farms out there that have water sources as ponds, or up there some of them call what we would call ponds, lakes up there. Mm-hmm. So they have these as their water sources, and then they have man-made or natural dams. And some of these dams have gotten so waterlogged because of the debris that washed down into their overflow drains didn't allow the drain to do what it was naturally supposed to do. So the water rose up against the dam for so many days, saturated the earthen dam, and now they're concerned there that those dams are going to break. And then what are they going to be left with? So
Sounds like ours.
That happened to ours in Florence, and the USDA came
exactly.
out, gave us a quote of what we would have to pay with them, and we were just like, "Man, I can build a dam for a lot less than my half."
Yeah, we're gonna find another way to go do that.
yeah.
Well, okay. Anything else you guys want to say in regards to what's going on right now?
I can tell you on behalf of us and everybody who has backed us and made donations and sponsored us is thank you.
Yeah.
So that's what's keeping us going. So.
And don't stop. I mean, this is, with these disasters, like you said, the donation drive, it hits hard at first, and then people kind of get busy, lose interest. It's no longer in social media. It's no longer a thing. But to the folks that are in these counties that are affected in the western part of the state, it's a thing. And it's going to continue to be a thing for quite some time. They're going to continue to need help. So we kind of need those of us who can still afford it physically or financially to still be able to help them out one way or another, because if we were in their shoes, we would hope somebody would step up and help us out as well. They don't have any other options.
I think it's frustrating because there are so many different efforts to raise funds, and I think that's important because each one of those efforts is going to reach different people, and they need funds up there, no matter how it gets in there. But you go up there and you're like, you can be like, yeah, we raised some money, and then you go up there and you see everything, and you're like, I didn't put a dent in this,
Absolutely.
And that's
absolutely
kind of like, for me, the frustrating part. But I know that every bit that people can do is gonna, ultimately help out those communities. But it's just like, trying to quantify the damage, especially when you go to Old Fort and Swannanoa. It looks like a bomb went off.
Absolutely.
It does. It looks like a war zone.
Absolutely. When you take full-size tractor trailers and turn them upside down and make them like they went through a compactor, and you find cars that was actually put in place 100 years ago to actually help the dams of these creeks and all, you see them unearthed. It's amazing. When you take 30, 40,000 gallon fuel tanks from a public school 100, 300 yards downstream and flip it upside down, it's a mess.
Yeah.
It's there. We've seen it. I mean, you see tractor trailers right there on telephone poles, houses cut in two. It's a thing.
Yeah.
I mean, it is a thing.
It's awe-inspiring what nature can accomplish, but also mortifying to realize how
Absolutely.
small we are in the
You
scheme of
ain't gonna stop it.
Yeah. And
You can do a lot of effort, but you're not gonna stop it.